All right, welcome everyone. I hope that you're having a good day so far. Now, I want you guys to let me know if my audio is okay. I'm still struggling with Mac's audio driver, and for some reason, it doesn't like either audio device that I give it very well. And hopefully, this is okay. I'm gonna try to work on it some more, but I had to go live, so it's right now. So let me know if it's bearable. If it's not bearable, we can try some more stuff live, and see if I can't get it working properly. I think there's a little bit of popping in that. I'm really sorry about that. Which probably means after it's live for a couple of days, I'll probably take it down since the audio quality isn't great, just in case it's somebody's first time. All right, if it is your first time and you're watching this, first, I'm sorry about the audio quality. I really do try, but if everybody had the same number of problems I do when I use a Mac, nobody would use Macs. Seriously. I have problems all the time with them, with their audio interfaces, and maybe I'm doing stuff that's a little weird. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but it's caused me problems. So, all right. Well, hopefully all of you are having had a wonderful weekend, and hopefully you're having a great start to your week. So, let's get into the news. First off, as always, all thoughts here are those of my own. I haven't been paid or asked to say anything by anyone. And yeah, I'm just here to share some time with you guys, talk about the news, talk about what happened, maybe talk a little bit about what's important. And other than that, let's dig into it. If you're just joining, I'm sorry about my audio. I think that it's pretty bad. I think there's like a popping in it, but it was better than the constant static of the other audio interface. So I'm not sure what's going on, and I'm going to have to work on it. If it's bearable, we'll continue. If it's not bearable, let me know, and we'll do some live debugging of it and see if we can't get it bearable. I spent the last 15 minutes debugging it though, so. All right, so there's two things at the very top of the list. Two things. First is Igor is leaving nginx. If you don't know who Igor is, he is the person who spent like 9 years individually creating nginx. He he created nginx and spent a ton of his time. Nginx was acquired by F5, I don't know, like 5 years ago. And it seems like it's time for Igor to take a break. So I love this blog post from F5. Obviously, I said the death of Nginx. Nginx is in good hands. You don't have to bail now. But Igor is really part of that project. So, anyways, this was a really good blog post. It went over the history of Igor's contributions and what he did, what his goal was when he set out to make a really fast um, web server, and how it kind of grew over the years until F5 bought it. And so, anyways, yeah, Igor's leaving. I don't know how many of you all use nginx. I know I use nginx and HA proxy quite a bit. So yeah, I'm a little sad to see him go, but I'm actually hoping that he's leaving with a great big payday and he's going to get to spend a lot of time with his family. And so I hope it's a really good move for him. Yeah. So congratulations, Igor. Good job. All right. So yeah. Anyways, another interesting bit of news, and then we'll jump into security and vulnerabilities like you all really like to do. What I found was this. The reason this is interesting at all, I mean, I find if Google hadn't had a unit that was at least investigating uses of the blockchain or a blockchain, I don't like the terminology the blockchain, but a blockchain or blockchaining technology, there was a engineer who publicly on Twitter told Kelsey Hightower, which I really do like Kelsey Hightower. I think he's like the. Anyways, told Kelsey Hightower not to even ask questions about it, and any company that would do anything with blockchain was evil. His words, evil. He worked for Google. So hopefully he has quit his job on this news. No, I don't know. Just this is why I would consider be careful calling something evil. How's the audio, guys? Is it okay? I mean, it wasn't sounding okay to me, but I think I'm gonna have to buy another audio interface that specifically works for Macs. Anyways, he called it evil and said that you should never work for a company that even thinks about using it. So I don't know. It looks like Google is maybe starting to take it seriously. I actually have a video maybe coming out in the next 2 months. I'm putting a lot of work into it. It's going to be like a 45-minute video that goes over blockchain from where it came from to where it's going and kind of like arguing both sides. I find like that's the most effective way to actually understand your position is to actually effectively argue both sides. I'm going to argue the sides that it's terrible and that it's really, really useful. And then hopefully we'll come to a really cool conclusion. So definitely watch that when it comes out. I'm putting a ton of work into it. I personally find blockchain to be really interesting with the distributed consensus. Imagine a Kubernetes control plane that wasn't locked down to just 3 machines or stuff like that. There are, or I know you can go up to 5 or 7. I get it, but I think that there's some really cool uses. I think the current ones are just horrible, don't get me wrong, but I do think there could be some really cool uses, especially like a distributed search if you're very worried about privacy, as well as just Google not censoring the crap out of things. So I do think that there are really good uses, but I also think what most people think of crypto and blockchains are horrible uses. So again, I'm working on arguing both sides. There's also an educational 10 minutes of what a blockchain is. And anyways, yeah, working on it. Google obviously sees some merit in it. Again, all new technologies like this probably have something you can learn. I know I learned to program Haskell, which was actually more painful than Rust has been. And I learned new ways to write code. Even though I don't use Haskell to write code, I write better code because I learned the arguments that actually make it good. They have some really good arguments. Now, not all of it do I agree with. You don't have to agree with all of it to learn something from it. So let's jump in to our security. All right. So, Sysdig, they released the project Falco, which is an awesome open source project that they donated to the CNCF. Got to give them credit for that. Found a vulnerability in AWS Lambda functions, and they released a fantastic blog article on it. I do believe it's patched at this point, so you don't have to worry about that. But they released a breakdown of why I love this blog post in the security. Is that they really released, like, they dug down into how they found it and how they discovered it and their thought process behind it. And I thought it was really well done. It's a longer blog post. You're probably going to spend about 10 minutes on it. But if you're trying to get into security, I think that this is a really good place to start. And yeah, so, and great company that I know of. I don't know of anything. I don't think they kick kittens or anything like that. The Department of Homeland Security, if you guys don't know who that is because you're not American, don't worry. I think that they're an illegal organization. But they do release they release basically mandates for the federal organizations, and they released more mandates on different vulnerabilities that needed to be patched by February something. Anyways, it's really good to watch this because they actually have really good information on patching and what really needs to be patched. So if you're a sysadmin, if you're the new Google name for sysadmin, which just escaped my memory for some reason. Whatever. You should read this. I don't know why I can't think of it off the top of my head. All right. Yep. This was released by the FBI, which is talking about cyber criminals using QR codes. So you sit down at a table to order a meal, and there's a QR code there for the menu that could have been released by cyber criminals. So really know whose QR code you're watching, because it could take you to a malicious website that looks like the website that you would be planning to go to, and put your credit card information in. So definitely be thinking about what QR code you're scanning, where it came from, and whether you trust them, and or whether you think it had a supply chain and the QR code was tampered with. So there's active hacks going off with this. So yeah, SRE. Thank you, Raj. SRE. I do not know why. Site reliability engineer. I don't know why I was struggling with that one. It's early for me, if you guys don't know. Actually, I made a pretty good cup of coffee. Usually my coffee pre-6 a.m. sucks. Like, there's just nothing to say good about the coffee I make pre-6 a.m. It's not great. Today's wasn't bad, but SRE. Yep. So anyways, yep, that's a interesting one. Man, it's like, you remember last week I found that thing where, if it was a malicious website, if you copy and paste, it could inject anything it wanted to. So it could make it look like really helpful code that then copy and pasted a command line with a return character. Can't copy and paste anymore. I don't know how we're gonna do our jobs, but we'll have to struggle through it. Now we can't use QR codes. Bad people are ruining the world. All right. Microsoft releases emergency fix for Windows Server and VPN bugs. This has been patched. Another reason to keep up to date. But yes, it was an out-of-band update, and if you run VPN or things like that, Windows Server, you should be looking to patch. They were pretty nasty. And the VPN bug specifically, along with RDP, one that wasn't mentioned in this article was an RDP bug. Those were actually pretty easy to execute an attack against. So definitely be looking out for those and be patching your servers. There was a pretty nasty Linux kernel bug, which was actually a security, and that CloudStrike caught. And yeah, anyways, it was patched. This is why it's so important to not do it alone. Pretty much anything with security, whether it's your OS, if you're Linux and you're running it in production, there's Ubuntu, there's Red Hat, there is SUSE. All of those people have enterprise grade support. And one of the things that support brings is 0-day patching. Like, that is one of the things. When I worked at SUSE, one of the things that we provided was there was a big security vulnerability. We patched it. So it's important to not go it alone. Because if you're trying to keep up with these things, one of the reasons I bring them up is because it's so important to have somebody to sit there and hold your hand. Well, not hold your hand. That's a bad word for it. But to sit there and ensure that there's just so many things. And if you're trying to do it all yourself, you're going to miss them. And this is why you got to delegate. And OS people need to delegate updating their OS. So, anyways. It was caught. It was pretty nasty. It was very nasty. Basically, with this bug, it was a overflow bug, and because it used an unsigned type, and it basically could have done a privilege escalation. So, yeah, one of the cool things is this type of bug would have been fixed if they were using Rust. Now, Rust has been integrated into the kernel, so they can actually start using Rust. Everything's in place for Rust to be used. I really think that it's mostly just waiting on people to actually know Rust that actually know the kernel as well. Like, you have these two paradigms. The really hardcore kernel people, like, only do C. They think eat, sleep, and C. And so while it's there and ready to use, they also just don't know it well enough to write performant code. When you're writing an OS that millions of services use, you got to write performant code. And so I think it will get there. It will just take a little bit of time. All right. Let's talk about our cloud news. Honestly, this week's cloud news was not that exciting. I'm taking a piece of news from January 5th. That's how bad it was. Announcing the AWS Data Exchange Amazon Redshift. Basically, this allows you to query public data from other people's Redshift. So, like, you could make like a public Redshift of like machine learning models or something like that and exchange it. I don't personally I've never actually used this feature, but it is generally available at this point. So you should feel free to use it. The other piece of more recent news, January 21st, was Amazon SageMaker pipelines now support concurrency control. Basically, letting you put a little bit more control on how concurrent. Basically, this is allowing you to limit how concurrent, how much resources Amazon SageMaker can consume. So it's good. It's a product that is maturing. You know, some of these things you don't think about when you're initially designing it, or you don't have the time, you know. There's definitely this thing of releasing something and getting it out there, seeing if people really like it, and if they do, adding more of these features that make it a more mature project. As far as Azure updates go, there were not a whole lot of updates. There was this general availability of Azure DevOps, but it was the Azure DevOps updates that were going to generally available. Good updates, but yeah, nothing groundbreaking here. And the same goes for Google. There just wasn't a whole lot. There was this Firestore key virtualizer is generally available. I've never used Firestore, so I can't really comment on this. If you have, let me know. There are some people that completely swear by Firestore, but I do know it has some good limitations. Yeah, and that was pretty much it for the cloud news. I felt like it was a very, very laxed cloud week. And there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on. I didn't see a whole lot of other cloud news. Now, I do have, and we're going to touch on that, some really cool open source projects getting released. So this was actually a pretty good day for open source projects. And we have some pretty exciting blogs as well. Actually, it made it hard to pick out a blog. All right, that was a weird pause. I did not freeze. I was just mind blanking. So there's that. Let's jump onto it. Let's jump into. Oh, this was interesting. I think I'm going to challenge us to think. I I I do this in my spare time, so I don't necessarily taint my offering to what I think people will want to view or want to hear, but I try to be upfront and honest. There was this VMware staff blasts hire of AWS manager who faced probe. And you can read all of this. I will link it. I can link some other stuff. Not all of us have done stuff that we're proud of in the past. Doesn't mean that we're a horrible person now. Also, just because you faced a probe doesn't actually mean that you were guilty of anything either. I do believe they continued to work at Amazon, and when VMware hired them, they actually talked to, I guess they got recommendations from 4 female coworkers. So I don't know. I don't think any of us know everything that went on. And sometimes we have to give people the benefit of the doubt that if they have done something wrong in their past, that they can learn and move on from it. You can't hold everyone's past over their heads the entire time. If you do, we'll never move forward. Not saying that people shouldn't face consequences for bad things, but those consequences shouldn't be the rest of their life. Otherwise, you might as well throw them in jail because they're not going to be able to do anything anyways. It doesn't make sense. So let's be helping people to learn not to do bad things, and then letting it be water under the bridge. All right, let's get on to the actual cool open source projects that I was talking about. I did want to bring that up because I feel like too often we don't forget. We don't, maybe forget is a bad word, but we don't let people say, yeah, I moved on. Now, if they say, no, this is exactly what I still believe, well, then maybe, sure. All right, anyways, McKinsey donates an open source tool, Kedro, to the Linux Foundation. Now, why is it important that they donate it? It's been open source. This tool has been open source. Why does it matter that it's been donated to the Linux Foundation? Well, I can tell you why it's really important to a person like me is the Linux Foundation has a commitment to open source. They don't make closed source software, which means that they can't pull name the number of databases, name the number of things like Grafana who have changed their open source license. When they've open sourced them and released them to the Linux Foundation or the CNCF, it's a big deal because it says, hey, we're making a commitment that we're never going to make this a private tool or change its license to one that is hard to work with. They're making that commitment, and so this is really cool. And I want to give McKinsey. I don't know what McKinsey is, but I want to give them the credit that's due to them. They obviously worked really hard on this and put a lot of work into it, and to release that and to ensure that it goes and stays open source is fantastic. So, with that, go check it out. Is it a Kubeflow replacement? I don't think so. In fact, if you go and check out the project, it can actually run on Kubeflow pipelines. So it's in this interesting aspect. It actually has some really cool UI and stuff, and I'm definitely going to try running it myself. I'm not sure it's the Kubeflow replacement that I was hoping for. But maybe if you run Kubeflow, this is something that you look to run alongside it. It actually could be, and I just don't have that much experience with it. But it definitely looks interesting. And it has the Apache 2, the null channel approved license. Yeah, yes, yeah, we could go on naming them Elasticsearch, MongoDB, Grafana's, although Grafana's is a better license than... Actually, I disagree with that. I would prefer the SSPL over the AGPL. And I could go into that. I could make an entire video on that. I actually prefer the SSPL. I think that it's less harming than the AGPL. The AGPL is too ambiguous, and it makes it very difficult to actually use the AGPL. The SSPL is very specific, and it makes it very easy to use. I don't like either of them. Let me be clear. I was saying in an either or, I think I actually prefer people to use the SSPL, even though it's not technically open source. All right, let's it goes into the... People have this problem, and I know I harp on it probably too much. You guys are probably tired of hearing me say this, but open source isn't a business model. You can sell support. So SUSE sells support, and they have some fantastic open source. One thing, I don't work at SUSE anymore, and I probably never will, unless a lot of serious things changed. But one thing that they did really well was they made sure everything was open source. They just bought a security company and open sourced their entire code base, which is something that they deserve kudos for, which should have been in my news, but I don't have that. But they did that. So let me actually find that, and then I'll put that in my news right now, because they deserve credit for that. Let me. Yeah, they open source NuVector. If here's an article on it. I'll throw this in there. They open source, and this is something they do really, really, really well, and I love them for it. But their business model isn't open source. It's not selling the code. That's not what it is. They sell fantastic support. So you want to run Kubernetes, you can get really good Kubernetes support. Their business model is support. Now they have engineers that drive these projects forward. The same with Ubuntu. Ubuntu does a lot of fantastic open source. I don't care if you're angry about them monetizing stuff, which you shouldn't be because they support tons of open source, but they sell support. Their business model is support. So open source is not a business model. It just isn't. And that's what a lot of companies ran into, whether it's Grafana, Elasticsearch, or Mongo, or I don't know, you name it. The problem they ran into is open source isn't a business model. Open source is about community and community. That's really what it is. All right, sorry, I get stuck on this rant. I need to make a video so that I can just link to that video anytime this rant comes up, and I don't have to make the rant again. Because, yes, it comes up. And then people are like, oh, well, I'm not getting paid for my open source. Sure, you're not. There should be companies that pay for open source, and there should be companies like SUSE that will pay you to support your open source project. I don't know the exact ways around that, but yeah, it's something we've got to work on. All right, so good job, these people, and thanks for releasing it. Thanks, Mackenzie, for making your commitment to open source and releasing this to the Linux Foundation. I think it's good. All right. I don't know why I have random tabs open. I didn't open these. All right, so another one, this one I found kind of interesting. Microsoft open sourced Azure Active Directory workload identity for Kubernetes. So basically, it allows you to use Azure AD workload identity in your Kubernetes cluster. So it's a federation for that. So if you're trying to work in Azure Active Directory into your Kubernetes cluster, then this might actually be a huge project. That's why I brought it up, and they're releasing it as open source, which is always really cool, because I honestly think that this could be maybe tweaked to work with more than just Azure Active Directory. So it could be not your DEX, but kind of your DEX, more concretely though. So anyways, interesting. And if you use Azure AD, I think this is huge. They should make money. I'm not against, look, let me be clear here. I'm not against people making money. And I honestly think, like when Log4j came out, I harped on the people that used those Log4j and didn't support it with either money or paying for engineers to work on it. That was the failure of the people that used it, not the people that maintained it on their own free time. No. All right? So I am all for people getting paid for it. The business model just cannot be selling your code. If you want to do open source, you gotta make money some other way on it. I don't make money off of my open source contributions, but that's fine because I'm all about supporting the community. I do this news to support the community and that type of stuff. I guess I technically make like $15 a month on YouTube and helping you all, but yeah, I don't consider that making money. But yeah, Anyways, moving on. They should make money. I'm not saying that. You just can't make a business model on selling your code if that code is open source. That's my point. All right, let's get into the blogs of the week. Blogs of the week. I couldn't narrow this down to one blog of the week. So first, this is the blog of the week for a beginner in CI/CD pipelines with GitHub Actions and AWS. Nayor Clement made a fantastic article on this, and it really explains it really easily. So if you're just getting into CI/CD pipelines with GitHub Actions and AWS, this lays it out really, really well. So if you're just getting into it, I would recommend reading this blog post, or you know somebody that's trying to get into it. This is a great blog post, does a great job of laying the information out. I only briefly read over all of it, but it looks really, really good. I know most of this information. That's why I didn't read it in detail. I've done a lot of this, but it's actually really, really good, and he did a fantastic job of explaining everything. So if you're new to it, go check this out. The next one kind of goes further on that. So we're talking about GitHub Actions. Let's talk about push-button security for your GitHub Actions, because securing your pipelines is important. Awesome, Raj. I'm glad that it's useful, and please let me know if these are useful. I do this because I hope it's useful to you guys, or that it makes your Monday morning or evening or afternoon, or I guess it could be your Tuesday morning. Anyways, I hope it makes your guys' morning better, or that you find useful information out of it. I try to come up with all the open source news that I can. And thanks for letting me know. Go ahead and hit that like button. You guys actually are really good about the like button, and I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me, though I do want critical feedback as well. You can hit that like button and still leave me a comment and be like, hey, dude, make your audio better, or hey, don't talk about open sources and business models so much. I actually do love the critical feedback as well, so keep that coming as well. Okay, so this is about securing your GitHub Actions. So if you're using GitHub Actions, go with that. And then because we're reading blogs on GitHub Actions, let's read one more. This one is to prevent GitHub Actions from approving pull requests. So this is actually a security flaw that happened, where you could actually have a GitHub action act as its own approver and push malicious content and get GitHub Actions to accidentally approve those. So yes, that's securing them one more time. And this is actually a new permission that was added. So you should definitely look at this. So you can say, don't allow GitHub action reviews to count towards require approval. Now, one of my favorite styles of doing pull requests is that you have a bot pool. And that bot is the only one that's allowed to merge pull requests. And this actually solves this problem. It doesn't actually matter if your GitHub action approves it. Although your bot could do an automatic approval. But if you're looking for 2 approvals, then it's only 1 approval, and you still have to get another approval. Probably best that your GitHub action doesn't actually approve PRs. That's probably end of the story. So I would turn that off. But another thing that you should be doing is making sure that you have a bot that actually does the pull request. I don't like doing pull requests. A pull request should be so straightforward in the merge that it doesn't require a human to do it. All right, this one, I have to come up with Rust. Anytime there's a good piece of Rust bloggage, I have to give it to you guys, because you know what? I've been learning Rust. It sucked. I suck at Rust. Rust has kicked me to the curb and made me feel like a noob programmer. Actually, I probably am a noob programmer, so maybe Rust is just letting me know how bad I am. But this was an interesting blog article on some of the cool things you could do with the new type pattern. And yeah, if you want to kind of stretch your mind, it's not something that you would do in another language per se. You can definitely do it in C++. But yeah, check it out. This is the Rust blog of the week. Rust blog of the week. All right, reducing security risks in open source software at scale. So if you guys don't know what scorecards is, this is just a project to help. Basically, you use it for securing and scanning for vulnerabilities, and it gives a lot of open source insights. The version 4 has been released, and yeah, I believe this was released by Google themselves. Don't quote me on that. I believe Google released the scorecards. Anyways, it's what a bunch of things. Yeah, I'm gonna say Google since Google's part of a lot of it. Anyways, it's what a lot of things use to scan for vulnerabilities, like GitHub Actions and things like that. So this is one of those databases they can pull from and ensure your code is scanned for vulnerabilities. So this is cool for any of you machine learning people out there. This is why I have such a hard time. I'm a sucker for blogs. I really am. I try to limit it, and I was getting good at it. And this week, I'm sorry, I read a lot of blogs, and I'm forcing that upon you. Maybe that's because I had Monday off, and I read more blogs than usual. This was a cool one from Google. Google released, I don't know how to pronounce this, StyleX. I'm going to call it StyleX. Anyways, StyleX looks to remove the enigma that is classification. And it allows you to kind of see why something was classified as a cat and what went into it. Not just a cat, but anything, really. So you can see why, how much weight each thing had on it and what attributed to it. Because sometimes it can be really difficult when classifying it. And you know what? I'm a novice machine learner. I dabble with machine learning. And so like I'm not an expert, and so it's very confusing sometimes. Like, why was this classified as this? And StyleX, I don't know. Looks to help alleviate that. So I'm actually really interested in this project, and if you dabble, if you're like me, if you're a pro, maybe you also would find it useful. I don't know. If you're a pro, you probably think I'm a complete noob, and I should just get good. I wish I could get good, but I don't have the time. I have a real job and this job, which this isn't really a job. We have fun here. We have fun. Oh, talking about fun. I just released a new educational series. I didn't release a new series. I released a new video in the series. But I want critical feedback. I don't know how I liked it. It had a lot of terminal, and maybe it wasn't the best learning. So I'd love your feedback because I wanted people to get accustomed to the control, the terminal, the kubectl and whatnot. But do you think it was educational? Again, I want that critical feedback. I do. I mean, I like the positive feedback too. So don't stop doing that because that would be sad. All right. There is a Web3 crypto browser. So I think this is an Opera's new web browser. Opera, not Oprah's. Does Oprah have a web browser? I don't know. One second, I'm gonna search. She probably does. I'm not gonna search. Anyways, this now supports cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. I think it just has a crypto wallet though. Like you don't need a special browser to browse Web3. That's not my understanding. That's not my understanding, but not the actual truth either. That's what I'm saying. So I actually don't like articles like this, and I brought this up more for I don't like articles like this. blockchain technology is the future. 1 second. They say that somewhere in here. Blockchain is the future. Like, it's a definitive fact. You know what? I do think blockchain solves problems. When people say blockchain is the future, though, this sounds like somebody that's trying to sell you on something, which they're biased. They are a news on blockchain. Again, this is not me hating on blockchain or the people that do bad things with blockchain, but more aptly is this is such a biased piece, it's hard to get a clear picture of what it is. In this piece, if you read it, they only talk good things about all of this, and they don't talk about any of the bad things, like how crypto miner script kiddies are taking over servers and just burning through cache, burning through power consumption, just to try to mine coins without using their own electricity. They're not talking about how Bitcoin specifically itself, not blockchain in general, is just bad. You're just wasting electricity for nothing. There is literally nothing. The proof of work is just a facade of work. It's like math homework that doesn't actually solve a problem that hasn't already been solved. And it's not even for educating your children. It's just math homework for the sake of math homework. And so you're just wasting electricity. You're wasting GPU and silicone, and you're wasting a lot of stuff. So when you have a bias, you won't ever realize those things. And this is why I'm releasing the video that I'm putting a ton of work into, which is why I'm probably slow at some other videos, because you have to look critically at both sides, and that takes time. It takes time to dig into critically both sides and think about them. So anyways, that was it, actually. That was it. That was my last thing. I know that we usually go over some projects. I quite honestly ran out of time yesterday trying to compile this to give you a good list of projects. But you know what? Next week I'm going to give you those projects. I'm sorry. Well, I'm glad, Raj, that you think the terminal would be good. I really am trying to release. I want that series to actually, I found a lot of Kubernetes series that gave you like, hey, deploy this deployment and see that it's deployed, but they don't actually explain the back-end inner workings. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to bring that and to also give you that experience where it's not just like this perfect little path. I even specifically told you of some things, how you could monitor logs, but didn't just show them to you, because I wanted people to like try to do it themselves and stuff like that, and to experience it. That's also why I wanted them to run a local cluster instead of just doing like a Kata code. Although I do want to do some Kata code, I just have to get the time to do it. So yeah, but critical feedback on that. I'd love for experienced Kubernetes people to watch it and give me critical feedback on it. It's not a very long video. But yeah. Anyways, thank you everyone. You all are fantastic. And I appreciate you all. I hope that you guys have a fantastic next week. I hope that we do some cool stuff as a group, as a collective. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the future. Oh, and one last thing. I do have a book club going on. We've only done the very first chapter, so if it's not too late, there's a video called Your Brain Needs You. I'm pointing in the thumbnail. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and join that. I think we're gonna have some fun throughout the year, and yeah, I'm putting on a hackathon later at the end of the year, all about education. So let's have some fun. Let's learn some stuff, and I will see you guys next week.